Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and today I'll be doing another video in my high school series that you guys have requested. So when I asked you guys what type of videos you would like me to include in this series, this was one of the most popular requests. And as you can see from the title, this video is all about how to balance your life so that you can go to school and you can have a job and you can still see your friends and you can go to church and you can do sport and you can do extracurricular activities. Like everything you want to do, if you're really passionate about getting it all done, you can do it. And so here I am to show you how I did that when I was in high school. This video is mostly aimed towards grade 12 students because I know that a lot of you guys wanted me to do that. So I'm going to base this off my year 12 kind of timetable that I made for myself. So when I was in grade 12, I was obviously like a student. I also was the college captain. I had a part-time job. I was also part of 3 of the sports teams at school. I was part of the social justice group at school. I went to church and youth group and Bible study every week, and I managed to have a social life as well. So I'm not an expert, but I do know a few things about this topic. So I have my little book here with all my tips in it, so if I'm looking down, that is what I'm looking at. Basically, my biggest piece of advice for you all is to choose your priorities and then to keep to those priorities during the year. So for me, school was a huge priority for me because I needed to get a certain OP or an ATAR to get into the course that I wanted to get into. Church was a huge priority for me as well. Work was very important to me, not because I necessarily loved working, but because I needed to pay for things, and I'm a very independent person, so I don't like my parents paying for a lot of things for me. And a social life was very important to me because I love my friends and I knew that I would need to have some sort of social interaction with my friends apart from at school because otherwise I would go crazy. After you've decided what your priorities will be, this is my second biggest piece of advice, and that is to get yourself a weekly planner. This one is from Typo. I bought it last year, but you can also make your own. Before I had this one, I used to make my own, or you can get them from Kmart. You probably can get them from Typo or KKK or wherever you want to get one from, or like I said, make your own, which is a cheaper option, and you can customize it for your own needs as well. But like I said, this one is from Typo, and this is the one that I used last year when I was in my senior year. So with my weekly planner, most of the time I would do it on a Sunday night, but I would sit down at my desk and then I would break up my weekly planner into every hour of the day, probably from usually 4 or 5 a.m. until 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. Then I started blocking out blocks of time where I knew I had something on. So obviously when you're a high school student, you have to go to school from Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. or whatever the time is for your school. So I blocked that out straight away because school for me was like one of my biggest priorities. Then I would block out my next biggest priority. So I knew that I had church every Sunday night, so I would block that out. I knew that I had Bible study every Monday night, so I would block that out. And I knew that I had to help out at my church as a junior leader on Friday afternoon, so I would block out that time as well. And then I would block out my shifts at work for that week. So usually I would get my roster like the week before, so I would know where my shifts were, and I would block that out straight away. Another trick that I learned is that I would not only block out the time of the actual activity that I was doing, like school or church or something like that, but I would also block out the time that it would take me to get ready for that event or that activity, and also the time it would take me to drive there. Because if you don't do this, you can end up thinking you have a lot more time than you actually do, and sometimes you can get confused and then there's problems. So for me, those were like my main priorities, and those were like the biggest things that I needed to block out. So after I'd finished blocking out those things, then I would look at the rest of the time that I had during that week, and I would decide how much time I could allocate for everything else. So I really recommend doing kind of like a practice one of these before you go back to school. So block out all of the times where you know you'll have something on, and then you can also see how much time you have left for other extracurricular activities that you want to do, whether that's sport, whether that's acting or art stuff or whatever you want to do. Make sure you actually know you'll have time for it before you commit to it. Apart from the things that I'd already blocked off, I always knew that from Monday to Thursday I wouldn't be able to do anything else in the afternoon unless it was like a football game that I was like playing, or it was like a training session. Because during my senior year, I would literally wake up, sometimes go to the gym or sometimes not, then I would get ready for school, go to school, and then obviously I was at school for most of the day. Then I would either have a training session or a football game after school, or if I didn't have that, I would go straight home. Then I would start my schoolwork, whether it was homework, assignment work, or studying, and I would start that pretty much almost as soon as I got home. Maybe I'd grab a snack or something first, or watch a YouTube video. Then I would start my work. I would go all the way up until dinner. Then I I would stop, have dinner, then I would literally start work as soon as I finished dinner pretty much, and I would work until I had to go to bed. So from Monday through to Thursday, that is what I did every single day. So a lot of you guys asked me how much time I allocated for studying and schoolwork and stuff like that. I didn't set aside a certain amount of hours, but it was basically every time that I had free time, I would be doing schoolwork. And if I didn't have enough schoolwork, I would be doing editing or filming. But it's pretty rare to have free time in grade 12, at least for me anyway. I'm also going to make a video about how I study and stay motivated and stuff like that coming later on, so stay tuned for that, but I won't be talking about that in this video. Like I said, I would do that from Monday to Thursday, but I wouldn't do that on Fridays. Friday was kind of like a chill day for me, but kind of not. So I would come home and do whatever, but at 5 o'clock I would have to leave my house and head down to church because I was a junior leader at the little kids youth group there. So I would be there from about 5 till 7 or sometimes 7:30 depending if it ran late. And so I didn't really have a lot of time in between from when I got home from school to when I had to leave for that, because I also had to get ready for that. And so I didn't really have enough time to do schoolwork on that day. So I would kind of just relax on Friday afternoons instead of trying to fit more work in there because I usually didn't have time. And then when I finished little kids youth group, I had a choice. So depending on how much schoolwork I had that week, I would either go home and do some extra study or more schoolwork if that's what I had to do, if I hadn't finished everything I needed to finish for that week. Or if I didn't have too much work, I would go and hang out with my friends. Then on Saturdays, my Saturdays were always pretty different. Sometimes I would have work, sometimes I wouldn't, and I'd use that as a filming day. I often use Saturdays as filming days and editing days and doing YouTube work. Or I would spend the day doing schoolwork if I had to catch up on stuff that I didn't have time to do during the week. And then at night time, so usually around dinner time or after dinner time, Saturday night was my night with friends. So that was my social night. I don't really remember many Saturday nights when I was at home. Sometimes if I had a party on Friday night or something and I still had lots of work to do, I would kind of just switch my days around and I would go to the party or something after youth on a Friday night, and then I would do extra schoolwork on Saturday night instead. But you kind of just work that out for yourself as you go along. On Sundays, I would pretty much always work during the day. Then I would go home, get changed, and I would go to church, and then I would hang out with my church friends for a little while, and then I would go home, and depending on how late it was, I would do more schoolwork or I would just go to bed. But this is the routine that worked for me. Obviously, there's not much spare time. I didn't have time to sleep in. I didn't have time to spend the whole day with my friends. If you're like me and you want to cram as much as you possibly can into your senior year, you don't really have any time to waste. You don't have any time to procrastinate or be lazy or just sit around doing nothing. Every hour of my day was always planned, unless I planned to have a break for an hour. But one of my biggest tips for you guys is that if you still want to have a social life and if you still want to hang out with your friends, just do it at night time. In year 12, a lot of your friends will start to get their Ps and it will become a lot easier. Another big tip, get your Ps as soon as you possibly can. It will make your life so much better. But if you hang out with your friends at night time or in the evening, as long as your parents allow you to, you have the whole day to do schoolwork, to do your part-time job, to do jobs around the house if that's what your parents want you to do, to have a YouTube channel if that's what you choose to do. But you basically have your whole day free. And then you can get all of your work done during the day, and then you can kind of relax and chill out with your friends at nighttime. And that worked out so well for me. It does mean that you don't get to spend the whole day with your friends or your boyfriend or your family, but that just depends on your priorities. You can change those things around, so maybe you'll want to spend a whole day with your family and then just do all of your schoolwork, all of your other things at nighttime. You just have to find out what works best for you. So play around with your own timetable, figure out when you need to be doing things, when you have time to have a break. Make sure you do allocate times for you to have a break, because otherwise you'll just get really stressed out. But when you start writing down all the things you have to do and you start slotting it into a timetable or like a weekly planner like I did, you really see how much time you have left and how much time you can allocate to your friends and your family and all of those things. But like I said, choose your priorities at the start of the year so that you don't stray from those, so that you kind of have your mindset where you want it to be, because if you don't have your priorities set, you kind of just find yourself floating around, not really know what you're doing. Another huge tip is write a to-do list every single day. I would come home from school, maybe get a snack or something, and I would write a to-do list every single day. I still do that now, even though I'm not at school. I would do it on holidays, I would do it on weekends. It just makes sure that you don't forget about anything that you need to be doing. It makes sure that you get everything done, and it kind of gives you that sense of satisfaction when you tick something off. If you're in high school and your school gives you a weekly planner, actually use it. It is seriously helpful. And if your school doesn't give you one, go buy one. But that is how I stayed organized and how I balanced my life in year 12. I know it kind of sounds a little bit hectic, but once you get into a routine, it becomes so much easier. So try and figure out your routine as soon as you possibly can, because the quicker you start that routine, the longer you'll have doing it and the easier it becomes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully it might have helped some of you out. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer them for you guys. If you haven't subscribed, definitely do that, because I have a whole bunch of other videos coming your way very, very soon. But other than that, I will see you guys in my next video very soon. Goodbye.